This is Catholic Forum. I'm Bob Krebs. Deacon Matthew Boyer is a resident of Wilmington and is assigned to parish ministry at his home parish of St. Anne's. He's an attorney with Connolly Gallagher. He holds degrees from Harvard College and the University of Virginia School of Law. He and his wife Mary have 3 children, and Matt was ordained to the permanent diaconate in July of 2021. The annual observance of Religious Freedom Week takes place June 22nd to the 29th. It begins with the feast of Saints Thomas More and John Fisher, includes the nativity of St. John the Baptist, and ends with the feast of Saints Peter and Paul. This year's theme is Embracing the Divine Gift of Freedom. And my guest today, Deacon Matt Boyer, we're going to be talking about religious freedom, some of the challenges that we faced in today's society, and also about the observance of Religious Freedom Week. But before we do that, Matt, I always like to get to know my guests a little bit more. So tell us a little bit about yourself, if you would, please. What did I miss in our introduction?
Well, the only thing I could think of is I got a degree from Newark High School in
okay.
1975.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Very proud of that as well.
A local guy.
A Fighting Yellow Jacket, yeah. I grew up down in Newark and went to St. John the Baptist right on Main Street in Newark. As you said, went through school, was admitted to the bar, I think, 87, and I've been just very blessed to work with a great group of attorneys and colleagues, as well as 3 sons that I'm very proud of, and my wonderful wife who keeps me on the straight and narrow pretty much. So it's been a wonderful experience so far.
How about grandkids?
I've got 2 grandkids. My son Patrick has a Patrick Joseph who's 4, and then we have Elizabeth who's just around 9 months.
That's great.
They are a total joy.
I know, aren't they?
Yeah.
Grandparents, I mean, that's like the epitome. That's so much fun.
Yeah.
So you're an attorney, you're a practicing Catholic all your life. Tell us about your calling to the diaconate, if you would, please.
Yeah, well, ironically, I didn't really realize how much I really wanted to explore my faith until college, and then I was on my career path to do different things, but I always felt like there was a missing part of where my heart was calling me. And so first in 98, I went through the year of discernment with the diaconate class, but at that time my boys were all young, and I feel like the Lord wanted me to focus on being a dad. But then when the call came around, I guess 2018 maybe it was, I was just under the age limit, so it was sort of a last call if I wanted to give this a try, and it just has worked out beautifully. A wonderful group of 15 guys I was ordained with, and we still keep in touch and we're very close, so it's been super.
You're the only deacon at St. Anne's, is that correct?
I am, yeah, and I'm the only deacon there for about the last 30 or 40 years.
Wow.
Jim Lafferty was there, I believe, in the 80s. But yeah, it's new to a lot of the parishioners in terms of what do you do?
So what do you do?
Well, Father Mink, our pastor, and Father Jasper have been great and allowing me to do a lot, actually. I do baptisms very frequently, burial services, which are very beautiful in their own way. They allow me to preach 1 weekend a month and a couple days during weekly mass during the month. And I'm starting to get into marriage prep, so that's been joy as well. Mm-hmm. So it's been really, really wonderful, and I feel like I've gotten to learn a lot. I'm still learning. I've only been ordained a couple years, so.
How about preaching? Do you enjoy that?
Oh boy, do I ever! It's such a challenge, and whenever you have to speak about something, of course, you have to learn about it. So it's really helped me just dig deeper into learning the gospel, learning the first and second readings, and I have to preach this coming weekend, which will be Father's Day weekend, so that'll be special. Yeah. But it's a joy, and you learn not only to study, but just to listen for the Holy Spirit and say, what does the Holy Spirit want us to bring out of this reading, want us as a parish to hear? And I talk with friends. Sometimes I'll get ideas from just conversations I'll hear with parishioners. So it's really a special gift, and I really enjoy the challenge of it too.
Do you think your years as an attorney has helped you with your preaching? I'm sure you've had to give a lot of talks before judges and juries in your career.
Yeah, that's a good question. But ironically, I find I'm doing more public speaking as a deacon than I do usually as a lawyer. Although I do litigation, I'm not in trial that often. So it's not quite so glamorous. It's a lot of time spent reading documents and writing. But so if anything, I feel like the deacon. And in both vocations, you're an advocate and
Right.
you have a message to give. So there is definitely a similarity there.
Yeah. So are you glad that you waited till your boys were grown?
Yeah, I really feel the Lord guided me in that. And I can actually remember the day I was praying in the St. Anne's Chapel as to whether I should go through with this in '98. And I just happened to pick up the passage in John's Gospel about do you love me, feed my sheep? And I knew immediately at that time my sheep that the Lord was calling me to feed were my 3 sons. And that was, I feel like that was a calling that wasn't the right time. And then later on it was. So.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Well, we could go on talking about your diaconate ministry all day, but we have other things to talk about. Religious Freedom Week. First of all, like if our listeners and viewers aren't familiar, what is Religious Freedom Week?
Yeah, well, it was started actually about 10 years ago by the U.S. Catholic Conference, Bishops' Catholic Conference. And I think originally when the contraception mandate issue was boiling over and religious institutions were being forced to cover like abortifacients and things that were contrary to our faith, I think the bishops began to realize that we need to be a little more aware of what these issues are and educate ourselves and, pray, reflect, and act, which is one of the themes of this year, just to not be so complacent and take our religious liberty for granted, but really be aware of issues that are percolating and try to participate in the public conversation in a way that, we can speak out about our faith and be heard.
Mm-hmm. The bishops have set it up to be like between the feasts of St. Thomas More and St. John Fisher, and then all the way to Saints Peter and Paul's feast. So they put a lot of thought into when to have this week. So tell us a little bit about St. Thomas More and St. John Fisher, if you would, please. Well, St. Thomas More is the patron of our St. Thomas More Society here in the Diocese of Wilmington, which is lawyers and judges.
Sure.
So he's very, very important.
Yeah, and he's such a great model for lawyers in terms of a very deep faith, very committed to serving his country, very committed as a dad. I mean, I think he had 7 kids, and at a time where girls weren't really educated, he was all in about educating his daughters as well as his sons. So in so many ways, he was, and somebody open to new ideas, that it was a time where the Bible was being translated directly from Hebrew and the Greek, and there was this humanist Renaissance movement that he was very much a part of. Of course, he's the author of Utopia and some very famous literary works. But, at the end of the day, when the king declared himself the supreme head of the church in England, Thomas More was a man of conscience and stood up for that, and it cost him his life. But yeah, he's a wonderful model for our society and for all of us. St. John Fisher, I know less well. I think he's less well known. There hasn't been a movie made out of him after him, A Man for All Seasons or anything. But he was a contemporary of Thomas More, suffered the same fate. Was very committed not only to humanist learning, but to preaching and to education. So he's also of the same ilk as St. Thomas More.
Yeah. And I think the bishops also, with having the feast of St. John the Baptist, he was executed for his faith. And also Saints Peter and Paul, both martyred. So, I mean, there's a lot to remind us to be a little bit more vigilant about our faith. Hopefully, please God, we won't end up having the fate of these great saints, but it's something that we have to be very conscious about. So why would you say is it essential to remind Catholics and really all Christians, all people of faith, that the importance of religious freedom in our country?
Yeah, I think in part because we've been so blessed to have it enshrined in our First Amendment,
Right.
and it's always very important to the framers and throughout our history. But I think especially today, when our culture is becoming more secular, and with the disaffiliation of a lot of people who might have been brought up, say, Catholic or in another denomination, I think when people aren't aware of the importance of religious faith, they tend almost naturally to lose a little respect for it. And I think we've been maybe a little complacent in taking for granted religious freedom. And now we have to step up to the plate because there are a lot of folks out there that just don't get it. Why care about the seal of the confessional, for example? That not to fault them too much, but it's a natural consequence of a lot of disaffiliation and secularization that people just don't have the sense of respect or value how important it is that our conscious rights and our ability to follow the teachings of the church.
Yeah. My guest today on Catholic Forum is Deacon Matt Boyer. He's a deacon at St. Anne's in Wilmington and also an attorney. And we're talking about religious freedom and Religious Freedom Week, which starts on June the 22nd and runs through June the 29th every year. It's something that the U.S. bishops put into practice, like you said, Deacon Matt, about 10 years ago. So you mentioned that there was some conscience threats back about 10 years ago that started this, and then you mentioned the seal of the confession, which is something that we're facing here in the state of Delaware. What are some of the other threats to religious freedom that we're seeing in our country today?
Sure. And if you go on the bishop's website, there's a really great page devoted to Religious Freedom Week. And for each day in the week, they've spotlighted a different threat, a different concern. And they range from the day one, for example, June 22nd, is respect for sacred spaces. How since May of 2020, I think there have been over 260 attacks on churches, statues, that sort of thing.
Wow.
Excuse me.
Yeah, sure.
And just to promote awareness of that and to sensitize people, respect for sacred spaces of all denominations and religions. So that's one issue they've spotlighted. There's some other ones that I frankly wasn't that aware of, like the government persecution of Catholics in Nicaragua has been going on for several years, and that's one issue I need to become more aware of, as well as religious strife in Nigeria along sectarian lines. But there's other issues like faith at work, not forcing people to go against their consciences is one that they've spotlighted. But actually, there's 7 of them, one for each day of the week.
Yeah.
And the seal of confession is in there as well.
Yeah, talk a little bit about that, about seal of confession. It's something that maybe we take for granted. I mean, all of these things we tend to take for granted. Speaking for myself, I know I do. But then when somebody in a legislature like Delaware, or I think it was also some other states, said, well, yeah, we don't need to protect that anymore. That's kind of like, whoa. It's something we take for granted that if you say something in the confessional, that's not going to go any further than between you and the priest.
Right, and the law in Delaware, it respects if you go to an attorney, you're fine. You can talk to an attorney all you want, but somehow you can't go to a priest within the seal of confession. And I think I attribute it to just a lack of sort of a tone deafness to our legal liabilities are important, but our eternal soul is even more important. And to say you can respect, well, if you got a legal issue, you can talk to a lawyer, but if your eternal salvation is at issue, you can't go and speak to a priest. It just, you even wonder how that would actually work. Would you have to have a disclaimer above the confessional that,
right.
well, you can talk about this, but you can't talk about that, or else
Yeah.
So it's really sad in a way. I think that it's even come up, and hopefully it will not go anywhere in Delaware. But if we're asleep at the switch, it's one of those examples of we can be complacent. Next thing you know, there's a law, and
Yeah.
and then the question is for our priests, well, what do you do? Do you engage in civil disobedience to protect the seal of the confessional? Hopefully we won't get there, but it's a very troubling issue.
Hopefully we won't get there, but I think that's what the Bishop Koenig has come out and said. It's something that if it is law, they're not, there's no way that a priest will divulge something that's said in the confessional, because he could be excommunicated, if a priest does that. So yeah, it's a tricky situation. Also, another thing that has been in the news lately, and I guess this kind of falls under religious liberty, is that there was a FBI memo sent out about taking Catholics, or what they call traditional Catholics, and labeling them as domestic terrorists.
Yeah,
That's something that was amazing as well.
yeah, amazing and frightening, and again, how much of it goes to just a lack of understanding of our faith, lack of respect, and don't even discount the presence of evil, And
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, you kind of hope that it's just ignorance on the part of a legislature or a FBI administrator, but then you hope that's just they just don't understand and not intentional or evil, but
Yeah.
who knows?
Yeah.
So what do you think, Matt? What can the average Catholic do to help preserve our religious freedom?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think we've been talking about one thing is just awareness and caring about issues and speaking out. And again, I'm at fault as well that we've all got busy lives, and what difference can I make? It's so easy to kind of excuse ourselves, but we have to be aware. We have to realize that we can't take for granted, as we've seen, we could lose protections that we've always assumed were sacrosanct. So I think it's that awareness part, but I also, on a deeper level, I think it's important just to live a vibrant faith within our personal lives, within our parishes, and beyond, because I think if we show ourselves to be people of joy, people who are respectful, people who are interested in other people with different perspectives, I think hopefully people will let go of this little anti-Catholic mentality that I think is in circulation, and people seem to be fomenting with, like the Dodger situation with the group making fun of religious sisters. That there's no place for that. And I think if we show ourselves to be joyful people, serious about our faith, we'll be more likely to get respect from people of goodwill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very, very well said. This is a little bit off topic, but in your career as an attorney, have you found it was difficult to live your faith in the workplace, or not?
No, I've been surprised all along by how many good people who want to do the right thing are in the law. And some of my mentors, the current Chief Justice of the Delaware Supreme Court, C.J. Seitz, I had the honor of working with for many years. Just, you know that there are so many good people out there who want to do the right thing that although you hear about the bad ones, of course, I think overall I've always been encouraged to find that the people that were ahead of me in line, so to speak, were people that I could really admire and draw encouragement from, that there is a place for us as devout Catholics within the legal profession. And so it's really not ever really been an issue for me where I felt like I didn't belong, or
That's good.
Yeah.
And you were recently honored by the St. Thomas More Society of the Diocese of Wilmington. So congratulations on that well-deserved honor.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it was very nice of them. I'm not sure if it was deserved, but it was very kind of them.
If our listeners would like some more information about religious liberty, where can they go?
Yeah, well, I think the place to start would be the Catholic Bishops' website, the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops. They really do have some great materials that are very easy to access and very informative. The other thing I do personally, I'm a big fan of Bishop Barron, and he has an internet ministry, and he always finds a way to touch on these hot button issues in just a very intelligent way. I mean, his learning, his background, his understanding of history and philosophy, he brings all that to bear and tackling these issues in a way I think that sets a really good example for us to how to be intelligent, how to be fair, but not to shy away from the issues of the day and kind of be educated and confront them head on. So I'm a big fan of his.
Yeah, a lot of people are, for sure. And also, I know that the Diocese Office for Deacons is beginning to gather a group of men together who might be interested in the diaconate. Is it something that you would suggest? Something that you would recommend?
Without a doubt. I've been trying to talk my friends into doing it. Unfortunately, a lot of my friends like me are above 62, so we're kind of aged out. But if you love your faith and you want to learn more and you want to help people in your parish and be of service, and meet a great group of guys from all different backgrounds. To me, it's just been fantastic to get out of my little lawyer silo and meet guys who are military, engineer, doing all kinds of different careers, healthcare, and yet are deep in their faith as well. And it's a real, it's been a real joy.
It's a ministry of service.
Yeah, that's the word diaconate means to serve, and sort of says it all.
Well, Deacon Matt Boyer, it was great to have you on Catholic Forum today. Thanks for being with us.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you for having me. It's been a joy. Thank you.
Thanks.